Welcome to the Ad Nauseam podcast, where classical gourmands everywhere can finally get their fill. Join us for a delectable discussion of Greco-Roman civilization stretching from the Minoans and Mycenaeans through the Renaissance and right down to the present. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here are your hosts, Dr. David Noe and Dr. Jeff Winkle.
Welcome, Ad Nauseam listeners, to episode 85 of the podcast. As always, my name is Dr. David Sinon, and I'm here in the vomitorium with Dr. Jeffrey T. Winkle. How are you, Jeff?
I'm feeling good this morning. It's still this morning, isn't it? Here
yes, it is. Yeah, absolutely.
It's a late morning, but I'm feeling good. Sun's out. I saw Juan Carlos on the way in, which always is a good omen.
You're going to take credit for that pun of mine, aren't you?
I'm not. I enjoy it so much. Think of it as an homage.
Yes. Yeah. All right. Thanks.
So, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Here we are in Vomitorium East, next to the lake. It's been a little humid.
Yeah.
Right? But Michigan weather, always so interesting.
Interesting, unpredictable.
Yes. Yeah. Rainstorm came through last night, and you could feel the humidity drop.
Yeah.
Right? Like I used to say in the classroom, it's so quiet in here, you could hear a grade drop.
How'd the students respond to this? Did you ever get anything?
I never got anything.
It continued to be that silent?
It continued to be silent. Of course, I was just making a joke, but I didn't let on with my face, and so that just increased the level of terror.
Right. I remember hearing about that from students. By and large, students loved you, right. But one of the things they always kind of puzzled is they never knew how to read you, because right. you would say all these things and just keep kind of a stone face.
Yeah. I like to be mysterious that way, wrapped in an enigma, wrapped in a vest.
Exactly.
But you're doing well. You ready to talk some Vergil?
I'm always ready to talk some Vergil.
Okay.
Yeah. So, no shout out today?
No, I guess people are presumably listening to what we're saying, but they don't want to be recognized for their accomplishment, wading through 45 minutes to an hour of this drivel. They don't want to receive any kind of recognition.
Okay. And I'm okay with that. I mean, I think that many of our listeners are probably a little bit more reserved and shy. I was thinking, thinking of myself in the classroom back in the day.
All right.
If we think of these episodes as kinds of friendly lectures,
right?
How are you in the classroom? Were you always gunning your hand up with your opinion?
Oh yeah.
Were you really?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
I was giving my opinion even without raising my hand.
You were just shouting it out in there?
I told you about the philosophy professor I had who whipped a piece of chalk at me one time.
Oh, you did tell me about that.
That's right, because he was not pleased with my vociferous insouciance.
Really? Yeah.
Yes.
He missed, though. I'm guessing that guy didn't have a good arm.
No, he whacked me right in the head.
Really?
I've never been the same.
It was dead on, right? So I was more of kind of the hang back and wait for my spot kind of
sitting
guy.
In the back with the cool kids.
With the cool kids, right in the back of the bus, back of the classroom. So maybe I have more of an affinity with the people who want to hang back.
I was a bit of a pain. I think one of the things that I like to do is like a parlor trick, is that if a professor said something, I would try to remember the exact phrasing.
Yeah.
And then when he or she finished the end of their lecture, I would say, "Now, Professor so-and-so, about 4.5 minutes ago, you said," and then I would repeat it verbatim and ask them to interact with it.
Ah, okay.
And that always threw them way off.
Yeah.
Because someone's actually listening, I wasn't really listening. I was just, but sometimes it was a legitimate question. Sometimes it was just kind of.
It was more of it was a gotcha moment.
Yeah, it was a little bit pokey.
Gotcha.
Right? I outgrew that.
Yeah.
But I mean, at least I was paying attention.
Right.
So.
Right. No, I would, as a professor, I'd much rather have someone just shouting things out.
And, yes.
And even if they're kind of missing the mark, than just kind of sitting there stoically
waiting,
or looking at their phone or whatever. The complete opposite extreme.
Right. So no shout out is what we're saying.
There's
basically.
no shout out.
Yeah.
Right.
If you want one, contact us, because you are the interesting ones, you audience members. We want to talk about you.
Right. We're friendly guys.
Yeah.
Just drop us a note.
One of us at least.
One of us.
Okay.
Right.
So you've got the opening quote this week, don't you?
I do. I read this article earlier this week in preparation for our topic today.
You prepare for these?
I prepare. Sometimes I do. Yeah, this happens to be one of those times.
All right.
Well, we'll see how it goes. And this comes from an article entitled "Deception and Sacrifice in Aeneid, Book 2, Lines 1 through 249 by one Rebecca Smith. Came out about 20 years ago in the American Journal of Philology."
All right.
And
what does Rebecca say? What does Dr. Smith have to say?
She says, "It is my purpose here," in her article, "to consider two scenes together: Sinon's lying tale and Laocoön's death. Two episodes within the text we hope to cover today.
That's right.
The many ironies and reversals of expectation in the passage have been extensively discussed, including trickery and sacrifice as dominant themes, and Laocoön's death as, in a sense, a completion of Sinon's lying tale. But a closer look at precisely how the theme of sacrifice runs through the passage will show that Vergil shaped the Sinon Laocoön episode to be a story of the systematic perversion of religious sacrifice, a perversion, furthermore, that turns at every stage on the perversion of human knowledge. Nowhere is the goal, execution, or outcome of ritual sacrifice what it ought to be. And while sacrifice is prompted by unholy human ends and turned into a violent portent by the gods, human awareness throughout the episode is both prominently at issue and helplessly deceived.
That is really interesting.
Yeah, and having read the article and then reading the passage, I had not noticed kind of again how deep these layers go. I mean, I've noticed that too as we've started. For me, this is a kind of a grand rereading of the Aeneid, which I've been away from in probably about 10 years.
Oh
now.
My goodness!
And just knowing all these many layers to Vergil's style and his arrangement and his positioning of episodes. It's extraordinary. And I think Ms. Smith here kind of puts her finger on one of these things.
Right. Well, I liked especially this quote, and it's so obviously true, though I hadn't considered it before, that there is a systematic perversion of religious sacrifice.
Yes.
And that this depends upon, it turns at every stage, she says, on the perversion of human knowledge. Mm-hmm. So human knowledge is warped toward unsavory ends, and that has its consequence in the twisting or perversion of religious sacrifice.
Right.
That is very insightful.
I think so too. In the earlier episodes, we've talked about Vergil presenting kind of Greek treachery as this kind of deep moral failing, right? And I think this is just another level of that, and I think we see that with the Trojan horse and with Sinon's role in this, Ulysses' kind of backdoor dealings and his using of his metis for these treacherous ends.
Definitely.
As kind of the deep depths of these moral failings.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right, Dave, we're about to dig back into the Aeneid here, but before we do so, tell us a little bit about LLPSI.
Yeah, so that stands for Lingua Latina per se illustrata, and this is the Latin course I have developed based on the famous textbook by Orberg. So you go to latinperdiem.com/LLPSI, and you can sign up for my course. It's $199 for Unit 1. This is chapters 1 through 9. I take you through the text through a series of instructional videos. Plus, you can download my audio reading of the first 9 chapters, either chapter by chapter or the whole thing together if you got a couple hours to, walk around your neighborhood and listen to some Latin.
And you can start this anytime. This is not arranged like a semesterly basis or anything like that.
That's right. It's self-paced like the Moss method, but I'm guiding you through it. So you can begin right now if you want to.
Excellent. And so that's $199.
That's right.
And just say the website one more time.
latinperdiem.com/LLPSI.
Don't delay.
All right. So what we're going to give the audience today, Jeff, is we're going to provide them with a close look, complete with a little artistic discussion about the Laocoön group, a clip from a famous British comedy from the early 80s, a little reading of Latin, and some more discussion of Sinon, and that's the Greek actor, and Laocoön, the Trojan priest who gets eaten alive by snakes. And this will take us through about the first half of Book 2.
Do you think we're actually going to get there?
No way.
Do you think we're actually going to get out of Book 1 in this episode?
I don't know. This stuff is just so deliciously riveting. I can't move away from it. It's like when you got a giant plate of nachos.
Yeah.
Right? And you've got the nachos and the cheese, maybe a little ground beef sprinkled in there. You've got the guacamole and the sour cream on the side. And, you're going to watch the game or something, and you think, after this savory delight, I'm going to have a little bit of ice cream.
Yeah.
Polish it off with something sweet, right?
Yeah.
But you never get to it because the nachos are just overwhelming.
Exactly. It's just piled so high.
That's right.
That's right.
You have that experience sometimes?
I think of a lot of things in my life in terms of nachos.
Yeah.
So we got to start today because we didn't even get to wrap up Book 1 last time. Right?
No.
So to pick it up where we left off, listeners will remember that Vergil tells us that Venus, the mother of Aeneas, has wrapped Aeneas and a handful of his men that have washed ashore here in a mist, and they've made their way down to the rising city of Carthage.
Yes.
To check things out. And they observe the paintings, the depictions of the Trojan War. They see themselves.
Right.
They're moved to tears.
Yeah, the Moenia Surgunt, right? Happy are those whose walls are already rising.
Right. So another kind of deep melancholy moment for our hero here.
Yes.
But we're going to pick it up here where Queen Dido, enters. And I think it's fascinating how Vergil describes her. And it's, I think, very much specifically designed to remind us of how he just described Venus.
Correct.
He describes her as Diana. She comes, striding and wearing a quiver.
Right.
And I think that adds all kinds of interesting layers of. I think he wants us to kind of compare those scenes.
Yes.
And so, as we'll see, Venus is very interested in Dido falling for Aeneas on a romantic, physical level,
as a way to protect him.
Yeah. Yes.
That is, the Venus wants to protect her son Aeneas against Carthaginian aggression.
Right.
By having a romance formed.
Exactly right. So I think that in some ways having Dido remind Aeneas, at least on some level, of his mother. This mother that he complains about. Well, you do this every time. I get a little bit of you and then you disappear.
Right. Why can't we talk face to face like people?
Right. And so I think even that kind of it stirs up a longing, just on first sight.
Yes, and part of the brilliance here, I may say, is that Aeneas and Achates are wrapped in the cloud, right? Fidus Achates, faithful Achates. And they approach to the place where Dido is standing, but no one can see them.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, the companions arrive. So these are men from Aeneas' ship that he thought were lost, but they weren't lost. They washed up on shore just like he did. So Vergil's genius is he makes Aeneas into the audience for the scene, and then we are allowed to watch the scene through Aeneas' eyes.
Yes, yeah, and that's a layer again that I don't think you really see in Homer.
No, you don't.
No, so I think there's more.
Well, if I may,
please.
With the exception of Odysseus at the hut of Eumaeus, which I think is around book 14 of the Odyssey, because then you get the understanding of what it would be like to witness Telemachus and Eumaeus with the reunion, and you see it through Odysseus' eyes in disguise, but it isn't exactly the same.
No, you're right. This is, this is Aeneas in disguise, but he's completely hidden.
Correct.
Right, and so that adds a kind of a narrative nuance that I think
definitely
that way we don't see. Certainly, we don't see a lot of in Homer.
No, it's sophisticated. It's a common plot device, I would say, in other literature.
Sure.
And it's very clever.
Sure. So so he sees his men, and I think he rejoices in the fact that. He not all is lost,
right?
But then Aeneas appears.
Right.
Venus removes the mist, and it's like this magic trick being displayed here.
Yeah. So to vanish into thin air, right? That's an expression that we can find in Vergil, Ewanawit, to vanish into thin air from Ewanesco. But now we have the opposite.
Yeah.
He is appearing out of thick air.
Out of thick air.
Say.
Right. Let me just read Lombardo's translation here, which I love his rendering here. He says, he had scarcely finished when the enveloping cloud parted and dissolved into thin air. There stood Aeneas, gleaming in the clear light, his face and shoulders like a god's. His mother breathed upon him the radiance of youth, breathed glory on his hair, and she gave his eyes an exultant luster like the sheen of hand-rubbed ivory, or Parian marble, or silver set in gold.
Oh, very nice. How do you like your ivory?
I like it, well, I'm polished.
Machine rubbed or hand rubbed?
I'm more comfortable with machine rubbed.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe just a light polish.
A light polish.
Yeah.
A little bit of end dust, that lemony, smelly stuff.
I don't need much there. How about you? How do you feel about your?
Well, I assume this is elephant ivory, but I know ivory is extracted from the tusks of boars. That's not so uncommon at this time period.
Right.
Probably maybe walrus. I don't know. I don't have a full taxonomy of ivory here for you. A ratio eborum, something like that. But I think if you polish it, it gets a little bit of that yellow luster because ivory tends to yellow over time. It oxidizes. So if you polish it, it removes a little bit of that yellow luster and makes it kind of shine.
Right. I was at a local museum not so long ago, and they had some scrimshaw.
Oh, scrimshaw.
Yeah, exactly. I like that word.
That's whale baleen. That's the jaw of a whale.
Yes, and it had been carved
right
into kind of a narrative scene, but it had kind of turned that yellow that you're just describing.
I think scrimshaw, total digression, but I think scrimshaw is amazing as well. You think about these guys on these boats, these whaling ships and other boats, fighting off scurvy. Their teeth are falling out. Yeah. Someone give me an orange. What are they going to do, right? They grab a bit of the whale jaw and they carve these beautiful, elaborate scenes. It's quite remarkable.
I think scrimshaw, that's the only thing that word can describe, right?
Isn't it a basketball term as well?
Scrimshaw?
Yeah.
Like
He went to the post and scrimshaw.
He scrimshaw like, is that he pivoted toward the
Yeah,
basket?
sunk a three.
I stand corrected.
All right.
Right, exactly. Someday we'll talk about the difference between flotsam and jetsam.
All right.
This is not the place. Right. So Aeneas appears, and this is a Homeric touch, just like Athena does to Odysseus when Odysseus encounters Calypso, when Odysseus appears before the folks on Ithaca for the first time. She makes him look a little bit better than he actually does, right? She uses it would be like a filter today.
That's right. That's really interesting. I don't really use any filters, but I understand what they are for, right? Adjust the lighting, give you cat ears, something like that.
Exactly.
That is precisely what she does for Aeneas.
Right.
Yes. Later, she will do the same for Dido when they fall in love.
Yeah.
I think that's and that must be book 4.
Exactly. Yeah. And to compare Venus and Minerva, Aphrodite and Athena here, this is something much more up Venus's alley.
Oh yeah,
like, making your appearance pop.
Right.
And so she would have I think a much easier hand at this than Athena would.
So what is Venus's plan here? What's driving her?
All right. So why is she doing this? So why does she want Aeneas and Dido to get together? Well, she's worried that. Juno, if our listeners will remember, is on the side of these Phoenicians, these Carthaginians or Carthaginians to be.
Because she hates the Trojans generally.
Yes.
Juno hates the Trojans.
Right.
Does not want Aeneas and his men to get to Italy.
Right. Though they are fated to do so, and Vergil has told us early on. And so Venus is afraid that Juno will incite the Phoenicians against Aeneas and his men, take them out. And so she is intent on making this at least... in the meantime, in the short term, a love match between them. Yeah.
So Juno has a plan too, right? Venus's plan is to protect Aeneas, and Juno's plan is to destroy him.
Yes.
But they reach a kind of détente, right? They're going to work together temporarily to protect both of their interests.
Yeah, and this never works.
Of course not.
Right.
You can't have two goddesses trying to achieve different ends on a team.
Yeah. So I think the process by which Venus kind of takes up her side of the story, I think, is really interesting.
Okay.
Because I think she could have easily, the story could have easily have been, she makes Aeneas look really good, she makes Dido look very good, they're drawn together, and they kind of fall for each other that way. But that's not how she does it.
No.
Right.
She does it through what some people might find a surprising means. She takes the son, Ascanius, and she spirits him away to one of her safe houses.
One of her safe houses.
It's on Crete, I think.
I think, yes, exactly. And hides him away.
Deposits him there, and then replaces him with a kind of android, right? It is Cupid, her own son, in disguise.
Yeah, which is really I think it's quite strange. One of the things as I was looking through this, I wanted to ask you is, why do you think she does this rather than just having make those two crazy kids fall in love with each other? Why bring the kid into it? What's going on?
Well, one idea that occurs to me is that just like the bribe that Juno made to Aeolus for the nymph Deiopeia, more beautiful than all the other nymphs, pulcherrimiforma, I think was the phrase. The bribe there, remember, was a Roman family kind of bribe.
Yes.
It wasn't just lust. It was, you can have this consummately beautiful nymph, and she'll make you a father of fine children.
Right.
So I think that part of the Roman ethos is that all of these things are seen in the context of extending one's family.
Yeah.
And so bringing in the boy, right? Can Aeneas really love Dido if Dido does not love his son?
Right.
He can't fulfill his role as Appius Aeneas, founding the dynasty, if his love interest hates the child of his former wife.
Yeah.
So it's not an evil stepmother kind of theme. It's the reverse of that.
Right. And I think it's one of the things that makes it extra surprising.
Exactly.
Now, I was thinking about this more, not as kind of broad. I think you're tying that into kind of the Roman kind of cultural value is really interesting, and I'm very persuaded by that. My observation was much more on a personal level. So Aeneas's wife has died in the fall of Troy. His son survives. Dido also, she loses her spouse.
Yes,
but she has no children.
Exactly.
So I think that but by making Amor look like Ascanius, sometimes called Iulus in the text, and having him sit on Dido's lap. I think it arouses kind of those kind of motherly instincts.
Definitely.
And it reminds her of perhaps what she longed to have with Zacchaeus back in Tyre.
So here she has a ready-made family.
Yep.
Right. And I don't know a lot about this, at least not from personal experience, but my understanding, excuse me, is that these ready-made families, they're often a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
Often as much trouble as the other kind.
Yeah.
So Vergil is saying here, look, this has, everything's going to work out exactly like both parties want to. Because Dido loves Aeneas by gazing upon his son.
Yes.
Right? Looks at him and she falls in love with him because the child reminds her of Aeneas, the father.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting dynamic.
Yeah, and Cupid is doing what Cupid does, but he's not doing it with his bow and arrow.
No.
But it's much more subtle.
Yep.
And
charm, conversation,
yes.
gestures, glances.
Exactly, yeah. And yes, and just to reiterate, it's a reversal of the whole wicked stepmother motif, which does not begin with Cinderella. This goes way back.
Oh, of course.
You find it in traditions around the world, but if listeners go back to our Alcestis episodes, we one of the themes is that Alcestis, as she's dying, she doesn't want her husband to remarry because she knows how stepmothers are.
That's right.
And so to have Dido fall for the stranger and for the stranger's child, I think for an original audience, they would have found that very surprising and very interesting.
Yes, and it also is a contrast with Juno's own behavior, because Juno is the original wicked stepmother.
Right.
All of her antagonism and animosity is directed to the children of her husband, children conceived with another, mortal or goddess.
Right.
So big contrast between Dido and Juno here.
Yeah. I mean, so all of these if you start to think about the connections between these characters and then the gods and the larger story, you really see how complex and ornate and intricately organized this story really is. Yes.
It's brilliant.
Yep.
Jeff, before we say goodbye definitively to book one, we have to touch on the Jovian prophecy.
Oh, yes. Take it away.
Well, remember that long around line 200 in book one, this is something we just passed over quickly, but I'd like to touch on it before we move to book two. Venus comes to her father and complains, why can't Aeneas just have success? And Jupiter reassures her and says, look, the promises I made, he smiles down upon her. The promises I made will be kept. These things have to play out, right? Don't worry. It's all going to work out. And then he lists these really famous lines, and they are, destiny lines for the rest of the epic. He says, this is 278, his ego nec me tasre rum nec tempora pono imperium sine fine dedi. So I have placed on them, on the Romans, neither limits of extent of kingdom nor any extent of time. He says, I have given, dedi, I have given imperium sine fine. I've given power without limit. So this is really important in terms of guiding the destiny of the rest of the epic.
Yeah.
And it's also how the Romans saw themselves. The author, James O'Donnell, in his book on Augustine, he talks about Augustine paying off his debt to Vergil. And it was this one line which really dogged Augustine as he thought about the Roman state and its imminent collapse. Right? Vergil had said 400 years before, I have given them power without limit. Right?
Yes, yeah.
And that was proving not to be true. But all of Roman culture was enchanted by this idea, right? Romans were exceptional. They would never collapse.
Yeah.
But of course, that's not true.
Right. So I was unaware of that. So Augustine was kind of haunted by that line.
Absolutely. Because all of Roman culture was, right?
Yeah.
And then when Rome is sacked in 410, Augustine has to take a hard look at that. And so he starts to write, in O'Donnell's terms, he starts to write City of God to pay off his debt to Vergil, to basically say, yes, Vergil, your imagination and your worldview, for lack of a better term, has controlled me and all of Roman culture for 400 years, but I have to say goodbye to it because it is at some level false.
Yeah. So the kind of the evaporation of the Roman dream to some degree.
Exactly. And
Augustine,
well said.
Augustine himself dies in the throes of that collapse, doesn't he?
You're right. Yeah. At 4:30, he's laying in bed in Hippo.
Yeah.
And the Vandals are sweeping across North Africa. So ending any Roman presence in the very place where our story takes place.
Right. Yeah.
Carthage and so forth.
Exactly. Right.
He never saw what happened in Italy that was after him.
Yeah.
But But this is one of those ideas that just haunted all Romans.
Yeah.
Empire without limit. Imperium sine fine didi.
Yeah. I think it's also interesting how, Homer does this a bit too, but in these lines, Vergil makes Jupiter almost synonymous with fate.
Yes.
He's the grantor of these kinds of things, rather than fate kind of sitting as this larger thing above Jupiter. I think Vergil does that too.
Definitely.
But here, Jupiter basically says, I got the keys, I'm driving the car, I'll get you there.
Right. Speaking of driving the car, right, from the last episode when we talked about the fates, the parcae, that's how they roll, right? Sitting in their El Camino.
That's right. I forgot about the El Camino.
You can't forget about the El Camino.
That's right, yeah. So, Zeus is driving the car right now.
That's right.
Yep.
So that wraps up book one, and now we move on to book two proper.
Yes. So book one, just one more thing. So when book one ends, the Carthaginians are at a banquet with, the Trojans are at a banquet thrown by the...
And the Carthaginians.
They're there too, but they're the Carthaginians are the hosts. And it's very similar to the end of the Phaeacian episode in the Odyssey, where they finally sit him down and basically say, hey, tell us your story, stranger. And so we get the same moment, and Aeneas then says, okay, I'll give you the background, and that's what book two is.
That's right. We get the whole flashback. And so it occupies all of book two and actually all of book three.
That's right.
Because book two is the fall of Troy, and book three is the wanderings and the Cyclops and Symplegades and all of that.
Yeah, so roughly analogous to books 9 through 12 in the Odyssey.
Right.
Yeah.
And I love the way book two begins. Can I read a little bit of Latin here?
Yeah,
I
think we're overdue.
All right.
Yeah.
Conticae rerum ne sintenti quora tenebant, inditero pater Aenea sic orsus abalto, infandum regina iubes renovare dolorem, Troiana utopacet lamentabila regnum, verint Danae quae quipsa miserrima vidi, et quorum pars magna fui quistalia fondo.
Nicely done.
Thank you.
Yeah, you want to translate those?
You want the Cresac here, or would you like...
Let's do the Cresac, because I think we did some Lombardo earlier.
So here's his translation. A silence fell as they intently watched that man, Father Aeneas. From his high couch he began, You ask me, Queen, once more to dredge up grief beyond all telling, Troy destroyed, dead in its black despond. Danaans with its stolen wealth, cruel things I saw and played my part in.
That's how he opens up his story there.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now, do you often hold forth from a high couch?
Not usually. I usually nap on it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So we've got the Toro ab alto here. From his high couch he began.
So I take that to mean like it's like a place of honor at the banquet?
Yes. Right. I think they're sitting at the head table, he and Dido, right? So they get served the cake first. They get the first draft of champagne and so forth.
Yeah.
And then he looks out over the assembled Trojans and Carthaginians, and his first word is infandum. Infandum regina iubes renovare dolorem. You bid me, Queen, to dredge up some infandum dolorem, unspeakable grief.
Yeah. Yeah. Now here, if I were to compare Aeneas and Odysseus in this same moment, again, it's just the way I read it, as I think that I could see Odysseus saying similar kind of, maybe he even does, this is so painful for me to talk about.
Right.
But he also, at the same time, relishes telling his story.
Oh, he loves it.
He loves it. And here with Aeneas, he says, this is very painful for me to tell. I don't want to do it. And I believe him.
Yes.
I think that's a key, again, another one of these key differences between those characters.
Definitely.
Yep.
Definitely. Speaking of relish.
Yes.
Are you ready for this?
Yes.
I was reading the newspaper this week in the Wall Street Journal. I don't remember what page. For some reason, A9 sticks in my mind. And they were quoting someone, and the person said, I really relish in that. And I thought, that's not how that expression goes.
No.
You don't relish in something.
No, it sounds messy.
It does sound pretty awful, doesn't it? And it stuck out at me, the misuse of prepositions.
Yeah.
So I really relish in that sport. You can't relish in something.
No, it has to have a direct object.
Yes.
Right? You relish something. Right.
Yeah, you can't garnish in something, I don't think either.
No, I don't want to do that either.
No, it really stuck out to me. And I thought you would like it, so I inflicted it on you.
I enjoy that, yes.
So, infandum dolorem, unspeakable sorrow.
Aeneas does not relish this retelling.
He does not relish in it.
No.
And I love this line, too. Things that I myself saw and of which I played a role. So this is really interesting. We're getting another first-hand account, but just like Homer, who takes the listener in medias res, as Horace says, Vergil starts us out with lots of action. We have to wait an entire book. All of book one has to be finished before we can get the flashback.
Yes.
Which takes us for 2 books.
Right. I have some kind of broad thoughts about book 2, and I thought maybe I'd like to kind of share them to kind of start us off.
Is this like a top 10?
Not really a top 10, but just kind of broad themes that I noticed, and we can kind of maybe see how this plays out as we go through the details. But I thought, again, comparing this to the Iliad, I think we definitely see kind of a broad notion of the Greeks are, I don't want to say like the bad guys, but they are the more villainous.
They're the bad guys in this book. Yeah.
Right. I mean, I think it's less so in the Iliad, but I would say that in the Iliad, the Trojans are much more sympathetic.
Definitely.
Because they're defending their homeland and such, but also in terms of kind of moral character as well. And I think we see a similar kind of thing here. And so I think that Vergil, he seems to capitalize on the sympathy for the Trojans that's already there in Homer's Iliad, and and has kind of the extra layer that these Trojans are tied to kind of Roman destiny, and this is for a Roman audience. But these Trojans, they've suffered unjustly at the hands of capricious gods, and they seem to be free of the kind of treacherous craftiness that is part and parcel of the Greek character.
They're a simple rustic people.
Right.
They rose to world power accidentally. There was no cunning or shrewdness.
No, exactly.
That's how they see themselves.
Yes. But I thought, as I reread this, I thought that maybe Vergil also seems to be highlighting that kind of guilelessness as a weakness that makes them too trusting, and they're too simple, and that's why they fall into these particular traps. So it's like this idea that we sympathize with them because they don't have these villainous qualities of the Greeks, but because they don't have those villainous qualities, they fall prey to all these other things as well. So
it reminds me of this novel, The Idiot, Dostoevsky's novel.
Yes.
And in The Idiot, you might know the main character, I can't remember him, Prince Alyoshin or something. Got the name wrong, but it's an example of what would a really thoroughly nice and innocent person be like. If you could spend time around a person who was really deeply nice, almost perfect in their moral integrity, what would they look like? They'd look like an absolute fool.
Yeah.
And they'd be so easy to take advantage of.
Right.
Which is what happens to the person throughout the book.
Exactly, right. So I think that like a character like Priam falls into that. He ultimately falls hook, line, and sinker for this trap.
Right.
And he welcomes the horse into the city, and then everybody knows what happens from there. But it also struck me as we're going to talk more and more about how I think Vergil wants us to read scenes against each other.
Yes.
So as Aeneas is telling the story of the Trojan horse, Ascanius is sitting on Dido's lap. Isn't Ascanius a kind of Trojan horse? Laying in wait for the Carthaginians.
Oh, definitely. Right.
So it's Aeneas is he's bemoaning the story of the Trojan horse while playing a role in which that very same kind of thing is happening right as he's talking.
Although Aeneas is not party to it.
He's not party to it.
He doesn't know about the deception. It's entirely Venus's doing.
Right.
And but the other elements of comparison are definitely apt.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So he doesn't know about the trap, but it's the fact that it's happening as he's telling the story. I think the careful listener, the careful reader kind of recognizes, there's another one of these wonderful pairings that Vergil's doing.
Right. Now, this is the only epic-length treatment, isn't it, of the fall of Troy that exists in all of Greco-Roman literature? Right.
We get a little bit of the horse story in the Odyssey when Telemachus goes to visit Helen and
that's book 4.
Menelaus.
Yep.
And they kind of retell that story, but we get in this flashback, we get this extended treatment of the fall of Troy that like we see in no other extant account.
Right. What about Ovid's treatment in the Metamorphoses that we talked about?
I mean, it's very...
It takes up one whole line, though, remember?
A whole line.
It's a lengthy one-line treatment.
It's a huge line.
Yeah, and so Troy fell in with it Priam.
Right, exactly.
Thanks a lot, Ovid.
Yeah, next. Yeah. So, there's so much to cover here.
Yeah, well, let's give just a quick breakdown of the book.
Yeah, please.
A kind of an outline. And here we're going to rely on the work of T.E. Good.
Good.
You trying to think of something funny to say? Some cheesy remark?
There's so many horrible puns to say there. I'm going to leave it alone. Yeah.
So the basic breakdown, thanks to T.E. Good, is the wooden horse. Then we go to Laocoön, the priest of Neptune, Sacerdos Neptuni. There's Sinon, the actor. And then we get the events inside Troy, right?
Yeah.
Which is Hector appearing to Aeneas in a dream. Aeneas then rushes into battle. We have the rape of Cassandra, the Trojan priestess, by Ajax Oileus, the monster. The death of Priam, slaughtered at the altar.
Brutal.
Yes. And then Helen, the encounter with Helen. I think this is perhaps the most gripping aspect of the book, because he draws the sword and he says, to himself, she is the cause of all of this. I'm going to kill her right now.
Yeah.
And he's filled with vengeance. Why doesn't he go through with it?
Well, let's save that till we get to the
Great.
yes.
Yeah. Then Aeneas goes home to find Papa Anchises, I know, having tea and crumpets or something like that, loads him up on his shoulders, grabs his son Ascanius by the hand, and Creusa, as in the famous Barocci painting, Creusa is trailing behind. She's separated by a few feet from the entourage, and what happens to her?
She dies.
Oh, so we're going to spoil it right now?
Well, we've already talked about that. We know she's dead. Right. Yeah.
And then Creusa's ghost, he goes back to look for her. Creusa's ghost appears to him and says, "It's too late.
Yeah.
Get out of Dodge. It's done. It's over."
That's a pretty quick transition from dead to undead right there.
Yeah. How long does it take?
Well, usually there's at least some kind of process.
Do you think there's a waiting period between dying and appearing as a ghost?
Insta-ghost, just add water. It's quick. But as you were describing that, I mean, it strikes me so much as Creusa as Eurydice, Creusa as Lot's wife, right?
Right.
And that kind of
the left behind and therefore stranded.
Therefore lost forever. Yeah.
And of course, the book ends with Troy abandoned, and the whole thing is just going down in flames. And Neptune is taking his giant trident and overturning the very walls he built. It's gripping, exciting stuff.
That's right. And then leaves it to be buried awaiting Schliemann.
That's right.
Hundreds, thousands of years later. Yeah. But we're only going to be able to kind of cover a slice of that today.
Speaking of slice, Laocoön and his two sons come to a grisly end, don't they?
They do. It's in my top 10.
That's right. And speaking of grisly end,
yeah,
it's time for the ads.
This episode of Ad Nauseam is brought to you by Ratio Coffee. Dave, I have something very exciting to report.
Okay, let's hear it.
My Ratio 8 arrived yesterday.
Oh, sweet. You upgraded from the 6 to the 8.
I did. I haven't used it yet because I had kind of one in the chamber with my 6.
Right.
But my son and I...
That's a firearms metaphor, isn't it?
I was referring to my coffee was ready for the next day.
Okay.
Right, yeah. But I opened it up with my son. And one of the first things he said, he goes, "Dad, this looks like the Millennium Falcon."
Oh, wow. You can't pay for that kind of press.
I did. And I pulled it out by my walnut accented handles.
Oh, sweet.
And the heft and weight. It's a beautiful thing.
Dad, this looks like the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah. Now, I've seen yours.
Yes.
But there's nothing like taking your own 8 out of the box and getting it set up.
That's right. So you got it set up. You haven't used it yet.
No.
But you're looking forward to
Tomorrow morning will be the inaugural run. Yep.
You've got the hand-blown, what is it in Star Wars? Did the something run in 8 parsecs or what is it?
Oh, they did the Kessel run.
The Kessel run.
In under 8 parsecs. Easily.
So the Ratio 8 will do that.
Easily. Okay. Easily, yes.
And I was going to ask, you've got the hand-blown borosilicate glass carafe.
I do.
That thing's amazing, isn't it?
It's amazing, right? And so it's now you're going to assure me that keeps it just as warm as my weighty tureen.
No, it doesn't, because I can't be dishonest.
Okay.
I'm the George Washington of coffee machines.
Okay.
If I chop down the cherry tree, I have to tell you.
Yeah.
It doesn't keep it warm. You have to serve it right away.
Okay.
Or pour it into your hulking flagon.
Ah, gotcha. Right. Okay. Yeah. So, there's clearly some things I need to learn.
Oh, yeah.
It's a whole process here.
But the learning curve is not steep.
No.
It's what's the opposite of steep? Gradual.
Gradually declining?
No, that's not it.
No, it's not right. Yeah.
Someone will call and tell us.
Yeah.
It'll fix.
And we'll give you a shout out.
That's right, because it still is just one press. You press one button and you go from bloom to brew. Don't forget the off-gassing.
Yep.
And then ready.
And it's ready. I can't wait to try this. Yeah.
So you've got walnut accents. And what is the main body of the Millennium Falcon?
It is stainless steel.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So and just kind of moving it from the table to my countertop. It was, I needed some extra hands.
Right.
It was you could feel how impressive this machine was.
There was heft.
There was definite heft.
Lots of heft. And how does Mrs. Winkle feel about the new addition to the family?
She's very excited.
Right.
She's very excited. Yep. She says, "So this is going to look great." And,
wonderful.
Yep.
And then I think you're gonna re-gift the 6 to someone.
We're not sure what to do with it. I mean, it's a beautiful, wonderful machine too. But
well, don't put it up, in a yard sale or something like that.
Oh no, of course not.
Because then someone's gonna score big time.
Big time. No, exactly. It might find its way down into the studio downstairs.
Oh, sweet.
So, some late night.
Coffee on every level.
Exactly. Right.
So what if our loyal audience wants to participate in this some of this coffee goodness, what should they do?
If they want a 6 or the 8, they can go to ratiocoffee.com. They can choose their whatever they want. They can type in the code. This time it is ANCO89.
Yes, ANCO89.
And that will be the code that will be effective throughout June of this year.
That's right, through June 30. Back in the summer of 89, that was the best coffee of our lives.
That's right.
Isn't that how it goes?
Exactly.
ANCO89.
89.
Check it out. This episode is also brought to you, loyal audience member, by Hackett Publishing, Hackett, offices in Cambridge, Ma, and Indianapolis in.
Hackett's been with us since the beginning.
Right.
Dave and I have talked a lot about our use of their particular text.
That's right.
The Lombardo translation that we're using.
Yes. Of the Aeneid.
Of the Aeneid.
Of the Iliad. Of the Odyssey.
Yes.
That guy is just a machine of fine translations.
Yes, and he has found a home at Hackett Publishing.
That's right.
So, great translation, wonderful cover. I love the artwork. You see that back photo of the Vietnam War Memorial from Washington, D.C. It's so moving.
Right. And they got the Krisak, the new Len Krisak Aeneid translation. Just read a little bit of it. If you haven't read the Aeneid before, it's time.
It is time.
Reading it in English can be a delightful experience when you have such great translations.
Yeah, so whether you want a kind of a prose-based translation, you want to have a more poetic translation, Hackett has, I think, what you're looking for.
That's right. And they have an enormous philosophy catalog as well, including the new Aristotle series. And they have Plato in several different translations of the Republic. They've really got everything. Tragedy, Latin American studies, Asian studies, Islamic studies. It's a really large catalog of high quality material.
It's massive. So listeners, go to hackettpublishing.com, HACKETT publishing.com. Take a trip through their catalog, find what you want, put it in your grocery basket, and if you type in the code AN2022, you'll get 20% off.
20% off.
And free shipping.
Don't delay. You really want to check this out. This episode is also brought to you by Pop City Popcorn.
Our newest sponsor.
That's right. Colonel Jeff.
Yes.
What do you like about Pop City Popcorn?
I like the way that they have surprised me. I think I've said before that when it comes to popcorn, I love popcorn, but I'm pretty basic. Just pop it up, put some salt on it, maybe just a splash of butter, and that's
Put it
fine.
in a 5-gallon pail.
Yeah.
Wrap it around your neck and go to town.
Exactly right, like the feeding trough, right?
That's where I was.
And so that's where I've been for most of my life. And so when we got the sampler from them, there was all these different flavors. I was very skeptical.
You were a little bit skeptical.
All right, and I tried a little here and there, and their two-way drizzle with the chocolate and the caramel. The one that I loved is the Parmesan cheese, and it was and I think it was because they're using actual Parmesan cheese.
That's right.
Not the powdered industrial.
Not the powder.
Right.
You ever look at a cylinder of Parmesan cheese that you might keep in your refrigerator?
I have one in there right now.
I do too. I have the large one.
Yeah.
You sprinkle it on your spaghetti and so forth.
Yeah.
One of the ingredients is cellulose.
That's in there?
You know what that is? It's sawdust.
What's it doing in there?
It's an anti-caking agent.
But I like cake.
they lace a little bit of cellulose through the Parmesan because otherwise the Parmesan clings together. It's cellulosed, i.e. sawdust. None of that in Pop City.
No, that can't be good for your.
No, I can't. I can't think so either.
No.
But we're popcorn people, right?
We are popcorn people,
right? And popcorn people, where do they go?
They go to Pop City Popcorn.
That's right.
Right,
and they get such things as the two-way drizzle, the Parmesan, the bacon cheddar. That was probably my favorite.
That was your favorite?
And there's also a really delicious butter rum caramel. It tastes like real rum.
Real rum?
Yes, it does. Who could put rum on popcorn?
You're never going to touch a box of the Jacker Cracks again.
No,
right?
No.
Or Orville Brick and Batter. No way. You'll forget about those for good. Right. So listeners, if you go to popcitypopcorn.com, look, there's more.
Dill pickle.
Remember,
Mrs. Winkle especially liked the dill pickle flavor.
One. Exactly right. Yeah, my boys went for that one too.
Yes, there's some great stuff. They got rainbow. I mean, the list goes on and on. Check out the website. You were just going to say.
Yes, popcitypopcorn.com.
Mm-hmm.
And you can go there, check it out, find what you like, and then if you put in the coupon code ANPOP, ANPOP 20 ANPOP 20.
That's right. Okay. ANPOP 20.
20.
You're going to get 20% off your first order, which is pretty significant. Check it out. Throw some in there. You're living the AN life, right?
That's right.
You're reading books. You're eating popcorn. Maybe a napkin. Throw it in there. Mm-hmm. Before you go back to the book, you're drinking delicious coffee.
That's right. If you want to do the trifecta, this is the third leg in the tripod.
That's right.
That's right. So don't delay.
All right, Jeff, as we get back into it, we're at the horse now, aren't we?
Yes, we are. One of the most famous tricks, I think, in all of literature. Certainly, I think one of the most famous tricks associated with Odysseus. He's the mastermind behind all of this.
Yes.
And so the Greeks have left this strange, large wooden horse on the shores outside the city walls of Troy. This is what the Trojans wake up to the next morning. Mm-hmm. And they notice that the entire fleet that was there on the shores where the Greeks have been parked is completely gone.
Yeah, they've sailed away behind the little nearby island, Tenedos.
Tenedos, just around the corner.
Correct.
Yep.
And out of sight, out of mind.
Right. And so the Trojans are wondering, what is this strange thing? Could it really be that the Greeks have left? There's all kinds of things running through their minds as they see this strange item before them, and in comes Laocoön.
Okay.
This in one of the most, I think, thrilling but also kind of disturbing episodes in this book, or if not the whole epic.
Right.
But Laocoön is a Trojan priest.
Yes.
Usually associated with Neptune.
That's right.
And he comes running up as the Trojans are wondering about these things, and Laocoön. He gets it. He says...
He figures it out.
He
was sacrificing a bull on the shore that day, and as he was sacrificing, it was raising its horrible bellows toward the sky, foreshadowing.
Just a little bit.
Foremooing, we could call it.
That's right. Probably the most famous example of foremooing.
I think there's no doubt.
That's right. But he comes running up, and he says to his countrymen, are you crazy?
Right.
This is obviously a ruse.
That's right.
But would you read a little Latin here?
I'd love it.
And I'll give a translation.
All right, this is line 40. Primus ebantom nis magna, come tanta caterva, Laocoön arden summa de curdret abarca, et proco, o miseri quae tant insania cives, creditus vectos hostis aut ulla putatis, dona care redulis dana sic notus ulixes.
Very nice. Very nice.
We didn't get to the thanks. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
We didn't get to the part about the Greeks bearing gifts.
Do you want to keep going there?
Yeah, maybe we should.
And I'll give Lombardo's translation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Aut hoc inclusi ligna cultandura kiwi, aut haec in nostros fabricatest machina muros, inspectura domos venturaque de super urbi, aut aliquis latet erdror equo ne credit telgri, quid it est timeo daneos et dona farentis.
There's those famous lines.
Yes.
Yes. Lombardo translates thusly. And now Laocoön comes running down from the citadel at the head of a great throng, and in his burning haste he cries from afar, "Are you out of your minds, you poor fools? Are you so easily convinced that the enemy has sailed away? Do you honestly think that any Greek gift comes without treachery? What is Ulysses known for? Either this lumber is hiding Achaeans inside, or it has been built as an engine of war to attack our walls, to spy on our homes and come down on the city from above. Or some other evil lurks inside. Do not trust the horse, Trojans. Whatever it is, I fear the Greeks, even when they bring gifts."
No, that's really good.
Right.
That's really good. He's such a great translator.
Great translator. I just love how it's so, there's no middle ground here. Laocoön says, you're out of your minds if you think this is a good thing.
Right. But then later on we'll be told, Vergil will tell us through the mouth of Aeneid that the gods blinded them that day. They just wouldn't listen to reason no matter what happened.
Exactly.
Troy was fated to fall.
Right. And I love the detail of what happens next to this. Laocoön's exclamation point is he takes a spear, chucks it at the horse where it sticks and quivering in its side.
And you know why it does that?
Why does it do that?
Because it's hollow.
Right.
If the horse were not hollow, the spear would not stick, and it also would not vibrate.
Yes.
In all my experience of throwing spears at wooden horses,
which is vast.
Yes, the solid horses, the unfilled ones, the spear makes a dull thud and just falls. It's only when they're hollow that it lodges and then vibrates back and forth.
So it's another clue that they are they're blinded to.
But they don't pay any attention.
But I also love in what happens to Laocoön fairly soon after this, that the fact that he threw the spear at it is interpreted again in the wrong manner.
Right. This is the perversion of human thinking, which leads to the perversion of religious sacrifice.
What Rebecca Smith was talking about.
That's correct.
Article. Exactly right.
So let's take it in a little different direction here.
Oh, where are we going?
Well, we're going to go to Yes, Minister.
What's that?
That's a British comedy from 1980 to 1984. And we have a lovely little clip here which deals with this Trojan horse and don't trust Greeks bearing gifts. You ever watched Yes, Minister?
I've heard of it, but
you're going to have to watch it now.
I was always told, I'm a fan of Monty Python.
That's right.
And I was always told that if you like Python, you'll love Yes, Minister.
Oh, I would say this is far better because it's much cleverer and there's just a war against bureaucracy.
Oh, I like that.
Who doesn't like a good war against bureaucracy? It was written by Anthony Jay and Jonathan Lynn. And Jay was educated at St. Paul's School and Magdalen College, Cambridge. He graduated with first-class honors in classics and comparative philology. So what we're about to listen to was actually written by a classicist, and I think it's just hilarious.
Cue it up.
Furthermore, Sir Mark thinks there may be votes in it. And if so, I don't intend to look a gift horse in the mouth.
I put it to you, Minister, that you are looking at Trojan horse in the mouth.
But if you look closely at this gift horse, you'll find it's full of Trojans.
If you had looked at Trojan horse in the mouth, Minister, you would have found Greeks inside. But the point is, it was the Greeks who gave the Trojan horse to the Trojans, so technically it wasn't a Trojan horse at all. Hence the tag, Timeo Danio set dona parentes, which you will recall is usually and somewhat inaccurately translated as beware of Greeks bearing gifts, or doubtless you would have recalled had you not attended the LSE.
Yes, well, I'm sure Greek tags are all very well in their way, but can we stick to the point?
Sorry, Greek tags?
Beware of Greeks bearing gifts. I suppose the EEC equivalent would be beware of Greeks bearing an olive oil surplus.
Excellent, Minister.
Well, the point is, Minister, that just as the Trojan horse was in fact Greek, what you describe as a Greek tag is in fact Latin. It's obvious, really. The Greeks would never suggest be wearing of themselves, if one can use such a participle, be wearing, that is. And it's clearly Latin, not because Timeo ends in O, because the Greek first person also ends in O. No, actually, there is a Greek word, timeo, meaning I honor. But the OS ending is a nominative singular termination of the second declension in Greek, and an accusative plural in Latin, of course. Though actually, Danios is not only the Greek for Greek, it's also the Latin for Greek. It's very interesting, really.
Yes, I take your point, Humphrey, but is it really?
Well, Minister, perhaps.
That is hilarious.
Yeah, that's great, isn't it?
It's great. I love comedy that expects something from its audience,
yes.
Right? And so the fact that they're dropping this with talking about indicative and accusatives,
right?
And nominative, right? It's assuming kind of a knowledge of Latin.
That's right.
Right. It's so erudite.
Yeah, there are also some funny references. I think Jim Hacker, the minister is named Hacker.
Yeah.
He says, well, they say to him, you would have understood it if you didn't go to the LSE, which is the London School of
Economics.
That's
right?
correct,
That's
which
right.
is like the lowbrow. Right, so these two guys, the writers, their Cambridge and Oxford credentials, they're making fun of others, and you're right. It expects something of the audience,
right? And I like how they kind of break down is that what's the famous line that when people refer to this is don't trust Greeks bearing gifts or something.
Right,
like that.
Don't look at Trojan horse in the mouth. Right.
But I like how he goes to the Vergil and says that's not exactly what it says.
Exactly.
Timeo, I'm afraid of Greeks even when they're bringing gifts.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah. So
we need
good.
more things like that in pop culture, don't we?
We do.
Yeah.
We do. I think that we're not dumbing it down for the masses here.
No,
right?
no.
No, exactly
No.
right. So I would love to see more of that kind of thing. So that's wonderful.
Well, what about the ethnic profiling that comes up next, though, with Sinon?
What's going on with Sinon here? I mean, where do you see the ethnic profiling?
Well, at the moment, right, that there's some doubt, some hesitation. Are they going to bring the horse inside the city? The Greeks have a backup plan because they are so shrewd. They anticipated this idea, right?
Yeah.
We leave the horse there, but what if the Trojans don't fall for the ruse? How are we going to get that horse inside? So the backup plan is this Greek actor named Sinon.
Yeah.
And here's the ethnic profiling. It's on line 65 and 66. Acippa nunc dana insidias et crimina abuno disc omnis. So this is this is Aeneas telling Dido and his Carthaginian audience, okay, you can in one glimpse, you can figure out the whole Greek race. He says, receive now, Acippa nunc, the treachery of the Danaans, and from one crime, crimen ab uno, learn all of them. All Greeks, right? All Danaans. They're tricky, deceptive, obnoxious, wicked people. And you can learn it all from this one guy, Sinon.
So Sinon, he stands in for the whole.
The whole race. He's the quintessential tricky Greek. And that's a kind of ethnic profiling, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. Definitely. Right.
Are you comfortable with that?
Aeneas seems to be comfortable with it.
It wasn't the question, Dr. Winkler.
I think to answer that question, you have to put yourself in Aeneas' shoes.
Okay.
Right. What he's gone through, what's happened to his
city.
Put
yourself in his sandals.
Right?
What happens?
I think that he sees how the fortunes of his city, his family, turned on what this man did, or this man with Ulysses kind of coaxing, pushing from behind. I understand that anger.
Okay,
I understand from a broad perspective. So, well, how can you judge an entire race of people on one person? But I think if you consider what this man went through and what he's lost, I understand it.
Yeah.
Even if I were to tut a little bit from my high couch.
That's right. Toro ab alto.
Yeah.
But of course, also the rest of the Greeks were implicit in this trickery. Sinon is just their representative. He's the actor, but everyone is involved in it.
Right. But I think any Roman listening to this would also, Rome, one of the things Rome, of course, is famous for is its deep love of Greek culture and art and architecture and philosophy. So maybe there's a bit of kind of a chip on the shoulder here.
Definitely.
So, what's Horace's famous line is, Rome captured Greece, but was in turn captured by
Greece.
By Greece. Mm-hmm. And so I think there's always that Roman
it's wariness.
Mm-hmm. They love Greek culture, but they kind of hate that they love Greek culture.
Right.
So maybe that's all mixed into this too.
There's a fly in the ointment.
Yeah. So the Sinon character, he shows up, kind of bedraggled and dirty and
hands tied behind his back.
Yes, right. So he looks like he's just run. He's escaped from something. It seems clear, and he runs up and he claims that he was targeted by the Greeks.
Right, and by Odysseus in particular.
Right. And so he says that, he reminds us that, for the fleet to sail to Troy, that involved a human sacrifice. Iphigenia, Agamemnon had to sacrifice his own daughter.
Yeah, Aulus.
And in so doing, sows the seeds for his own destruction upon his return. And the Greeks are kind of saying, what do we do? How long are we going to stay here? How do we get out of this? They consult the oracles. Calchas, the priest of Apollo, is involved again, and Sinon claims he receives an oracle that says, you had to get here with a human sacrifice. You got to leave with a human sacrifice.
That's right.
And so the question becomes then, who gets to be the sacrifice?
Right.
And Odysseus really pushes it through. Again, Sinon claims he looked at me.
Right.
And so,
and the reason is there was some old enmity between them.
Right. And so Odysseus is settling a score.
Right.
Right.
And the whole theory is that how does it go? The enemy of my friend, right? The enemy of my. No, that's not right.
How does that phrase go?
Fool me once, blame on you. Fool me twice.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yes.
That's how it goes.
Yes.
So the enemy of Odysseus is Sinon, and the enemy of the Trojans is Odysseus.
Yes.
Therefore, Sinon and the Trojans should be friends.
Yes.
That's the whole basis of the argument.
Right.
So if the story of Laocoön and the sacrifice is a perversion of religious ritual, then the story of Sinon is a perversion of xenia, or guest friendship, right?
Right. It's another overturning of this sacred thing.
What do you mean by that? Say more.
Well, to refer to the Odyssey once again, I think that if you had to pick kind of one governing moral principle that you see threaded throughout the entire Odyssey, is this idea of xenia. How do hosts treat guests in particular, and to some degree how guests behave under the aegis of a host, and that's a sacred bond. It goes back to you don't know if Zeus is the person in disguise at your doorstep, the god of this this hospitality of guest friendship.
Yeah, don't we have an episode about that?
We do. Yeah, we way back when.
Yeah, Ovid, Baucis and Philemon.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Jupiter and Mercury.
Right. So that's exactly the thing we're talking about here. So Sinon is he's playing upon. I think he knows kind of that naive, sympathetic nature of the Trojans. He's playing on that, but he's also, like you were just saying, he's playing on the fact that the Trojans also know that Odysseus is their deep enemy.
Yeah, they hate him,
and so that lends a certain sympathy there as well. And so he's asking for kind of ultimate xenia, protection from his the enemy that he describes.
Right.
It's a supplication. He's falling on his knees. He's he's throwing away everything and just begging for mercy.
Yeah.
It's kind of that extreme act of supplication. That's extreme act of xenia, of grace, clemency. He's doing this all under these false pretenses, and then that's a moral crime.
And that's how you can judge all the race from just this one man.
Yeah,
Crimen ab uno.
Right.
So how does Sinon get away? Why wasn't he, if the tale is true, what additional lies does he tell about his escape?
Well, he says that they were preparing the ritual. Why don't I just read Lombardo's translation at this point? So he's talking about it's the kind of the moment or the day of the sacrifice is here. He says, "And now the dark day dawned. The salted grain, the sacral headbands were being prepared for my ritual slaughter. When, I confess, I broke my bonds and snatched myself from death. I skulked all night in a muddy swamp." It kind of reminds me of Gollum, almost, right? "Hidden in the sedge, holding my breath until they sailed. Now I have no hope of seeing my homeland, my sweet children, the father I long for."
Oh, he's really laying it on thick,
big
isn't
time,
he?
Right. He's chewing the scenery, as they say. "And the Greeks may make them pay for my escape, poor things, and by their death expiate my sin."
Oh, so the Greeks are going to kill his family when they get home, even.
Right, exactly. And so I think that's so interesting is that they receive this oracle. There must be a human sacrifice for you to leave Troy, and they sail away without doing it. So it's again, he's kind of
because they couldn't find him.
Well,
his success
so
was.
you choose another guy,
I guess. So you're noticing some potential weaknesses in the story.
I think that, and again, I think that it speaks to kind of the Trojan naivete, but it also, I think he's saying that the Greeks, they receive this oracle from the gods and they end up, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
We'll just kill a bunch of people when we get home.
Okay.
And so he's throwing shade at the Greeks once again.
Got it.
Which may, again, make the Trojans say, oh, yeah, I get what you're saying. I'm feeling that.
I thought you were about to put together two words in a portmanteau. Trojan and naivete. Troyogite.
Troyogite. Oh, I like that.
I think you were about to do that.
I have to write that down. Well, I think we got to stop there.
We pretty much do, because we're running really low on time, aren't we?
Low on time, and so we'll start the next episode with the death of Laocoön.
I was going to say, does Laocoön survive?
Well, of course not. He dies. He famously dies in this grisly way.
And we're going to have some time to talk about the beautiful Laocoön group, which was unearthed at the beginning of the 16th century.
Yes.
In Italy, and it's in the Vatican Museum.
Yes, on prominent display. It's incredible.
It's fantastic. And we'll tell a little bit of that story, maybe reserve the rest of it for a gurgle.
That would be great. Yep. But we're up against the clock, and we got to get out of here.
That's right.
But before we go, Dave, tell us a little bit about the Moss Method.
Yeah, so the Moss Method is a program I have developed for learning ancient Greek, both the classical or Attic variety, as well as Homer, if you'd like, and the New Testament, which is an interest of many of our audience members. So you go to mossmethod.com, check out all of the free instruction I have there. If you like my method of teaching, my approach, watch the first lesson. You can sign up for the whole course. It's $325. Module 1, 40 lessons, 40 videos, 40 homework assignments if you like home. Who doesn't like homework?
Of course, yeah.
You got to go through the parsing and so forth to really learn the language. It will take you from
neophyte to erudite.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yes.
Yeah, and they also get the Office Hours.
Office Hours, direct contact with you.
Yes, once per week we meet. We get together. There were about 6 or 7 of us this last Friday, and we read some Greek together, answered some questions. I think we looked a little bit at the Gospel of Mark. In the past, we have looked at Plato, we've looked at Sophocles, at Homer. We've really run the gamut.
Fantastic. mossmethod.com.
That's right.
All right, we got some people to thank.
Yeah, we want to thank, first of all, Mishka, our sound engineer.
As always, she does such a great job, makes us sound so much better than we actually are.
Yeah, and when we started, Mishka told me recently, she said, when you guys started doing this, I didn't have a lot of experience as a sound engineer. I was really good at video and so forth. I mean, she's too modest to say that, but it's true. She did a lot of that kind of work. But I said, hey, can you engineer a podcast? She didn't bat an eye. She just, okay, I'll do it. And now the sound quality is fantastic.
It's fantastic. Boy, I would not have guessed that she didn't have much experience with that at all. She did such a nice job.
Yeah, learned so quickly.
Thanks, as always, to Scott Van Zen and Ken Tamplin for the great music you hear throughout the podcast.
Yeah, the guitar, screaming guitar. Ken Tamplin, vocalacademy.com or scottvanzen.com if you want to learn how to sing or to play like that.
They're the real deal.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep. And if you want to shout out, come on.
Yeah, come on.
Drop a note to Dave at david@adnauseam.com. Don't forget that V.
Or Jeff at adnauseam.com. Don't forget the V. Maybe you'd like to pick up a t-shirt. We've got the ad nauseam themed t-shirts. We also have a great one based on a quote from Erasmus, Quae nocent docent.
Yes, that which doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
That's right.
Broadly.
Yeah, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So what are we going to do for next week, episode 86?
We're going to pick it up and probably make it through another, 13 lines of book 2?
Maybe 12.
No, we're going to start. You don't want to miss it because we're starting with the Laocoön episode, which is one of the great ones. But we're going to continue to make our way through Dave's favorite book.
That's right.
The Aeneid, book 2. Yes.
Yep.
And Dave, you're going to close us out today with a gustatory parting shot.
Yes, here we go. This is from Sunday Atalaya, who says, God did not just create you to be a nice person and eat hamburgers until you die.
I love it.
But that would be pretty good, wouldn't it?
It wouldn't be too bad.
Yeah, thanks. We could relish in it. Thanks for listening.
Thanks.